He almost shut the door without opening it. The knock came soft, careful, like the person on the other side was afraid of being heard. Eli Mercer stood frozen in the narrow entryway, his hand resting on the latch, his chest tight for reasons he could not name. No one came to his ranch unless they had to. Not strangers, not women, not ever. Another knock. Weaker this time. Eli opened the door. A young woman stood on his porch, holding a letter with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her face was pale from travel. Her eyes were wide, green, and exhausted. When she looked at him, something in her expression broke open. And in that moment, before a single word was spoken, Eli knew his life was about to change. The wind rolled across the plains outside Red Willow, Montana, tugging at her dark hair and snapping the hem of her worn dress against her legs. October had come early this year. Cold already lived in the air. "Yes?" Eli said. His voice sounded rough. He had not spoken much in weeks. She swallowed. "Are you Eli Mercer?" "I am." Quote. Her shoulders sagged like she had been holding herself together on borrowed strength. She extended the letter toward him. Her hands were shaking. "This was given too, for you," she said. "I was told I had to deliver it myself. And wait." Eli took the envelope slowly. The paper was creased, the seal broken. His name was written across the front, in a hand he had not seen in more than 10 years. His brother's hand. His chest tightened. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Her voice cracked. "From your brother, Samuel Mercer. He died 3 weeks ago in Chicago. He made me promise I would find you." The world tilted. Eli stepped back without realizing it. Samuel was gone. The brother who had left. The brother who never wrote. The brother their father cursed until his dying breath. Gone. Eli unfolded the letter with stiff fingers and read. Not once, not twice, 3 times. By the end, his hands were trembling. When he finally looked up, he really saw her. She was young, early 20s at most, too thin, too tired. Her dress was clean but threadbare, the kind worn by someone who had lost everything but still cared enough to keep going. There was fear in her eyes, and something else beneath it. Resolve. "You knew my brother," Eli said quietly. She nodded. "He tried to save me." Her name was Nora Hale. She told him about Chicago, about warehouses burned in the night, about men who smiled while they threatened, about a father murdered for refusing to give up his business, about a sister lost in a fire that was no accident, about Samuel, coughing blood, using his last strength to put her on a train west. "He said you were the only man he trusted," she said. "He said you would do the right thing." Eli stared past her into the open land beyond the porch. He could turn her away. He should. This was not his burden. His brother had made his choices long ago. But blood still mattered. Out here, it mattered more than anything. "You can stay," Eli said. The words surprised even him. Her breath left her in a rush. Her eyes filled. She pressed a hand to her mouth like she was afraid she might fall apart if she spoke. "I will work," she said quickly. "Hard. I swear it. I do not expect charity." "I need help on the ranch," he said. "My hired hand left last month. You earn your keep. Food, a bed. That's all I promise." "That's more than enough." Relief changed her face completely. For a brief second, Eli felt something shift in his chest. Something dangerous. He turned and stepped aside. "Come in." The house was simple, clean, sparse, built by his father with hands that had never known ease. Eli showed her the small bedroom off the main room. His mother's old room. He had not opened the door in years. "You'll sleep here," he said. "I rise at dawn." "Breakfast before first light. Can you cook?" "Yes." "Chickens morning and evening. Garden out back. Before frost." She nodded at every word. "Can you shoot?" She hesitated. "No." "I'll teach you." Her eyes flicked up to his. "Thank you." He left her to settle in and went to the barn, throwing himself into work until his muscles burned. But his mind kept drifting back to the quiet sounds in the house. Another presence, another breath. That evening, the smell of stew met him at the door. He had forgotten what a real meal smelled like. They ate in silence at the rough table. The fire popped. The wind rattled the windows. It did not feel awkward, just different. "It's good," he said finally. Her smile was small, but real. Later, lying awake in his bed, Eli listened to the faint creak of the house, to the soft rustle of blankets in the next room. It had been years since anyone else had slept under his roof. Sleep did not come easily. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Nora worked without complaint, learned quickly, rose before dawn, cooked, mended, tended. When Eli taught her to shoot, she listened with fierce attention. By the end of the week, she could hit the target more often than not. He found himself watching her when she did not know. The way she hummed while cooking. The way she spoke softly to nervous animals. The way she stood taller with each passing day. It was dangerous. 2 weeks after her arrival, Eli rode into Cottonwood Crossing for supplies. That was when he saw them. 2 men. Clean boots. Eastern coats. Watching him from across the street, his instincts screamed. He took the long way home. That night, Nora looked at his face and knew something was wrong. "We need to talk," he said. Her hands twisted in her lap as she described the men she feared. Tall, scarred, cold-eyed, determined. Eli felt the truth settle deep in his bones. "They may have found you," he said, her face drained of color. She stood abruptly. "Then I'll leave." "No, I won't bring death to your door. You're not leaving." She searched his face. "Why?" Eli didn't answer right away, because somewhere between sunrise and dusk she had stopped being a stranger. "Because this is my land," he said, "and I don't break my word." Outside, the wind rose, and far beyond the reach of the porch light, danger was already moving closer. The night passed without trouble, but neither of them slept much. Eli lay awake listening to the land, to the horses shifting in the barn, to the wind moving through dry grass. He had trusted his instincts all his life, and now they whispered the same warning again and again. Trouble was coming. At first light, he was already dressed. He stepped outside with his rifle and walked the perimeter of the house, studying the ground for tracks. Nothing fresh. Still, the silence felt wrong. Too careful. When he returned inside, Nora was awake. Coffee steamed on the stove. She looked at him like she had been waiting. "You saw something," she said. "Not yet." She handed him a cup anyway. Her hands were steady. That worried him more than fear would have. They sat at the table, the space between them heavy with unspoken thoughts. "If they come," she said quietly, "I don't want you risking your life for me." Eli met her eyes. "That choice isn't yours to make." "Then it isn't yours either." For a moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked. The house breathed around them. After breakfast, Eli showed her what he had been planning. Rifles placed near windows. Heavy furniture shifted into better positions. The back door reinforced. He moved with calm purpose, like this was simply another chore that needed doing. Nora followed every instruction, asked smart questions, learned fast. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked as he handed her extra cartridges. He paused. "Because my brother asked me to." "That's not the whole truth." Eli didn't answer. By the third day, the land itself seemed to hold its breath. That afternoon, Eli was in the barn repairing a stall when the horses grew restless. Ears pinned, hooves stamping. He froze. Then he heard it. Hooves, more than one set, moving with intention. Eli grabbed his rifle and ran. "Nora!" he shouted as he burst into the house. "They're here." She was already there, rifle in hand, pale but ready. She moved to the window he had assigned her, just as he had taught. 4 riders approached across the open ground. 2 of them matched her description exactly. 1 scarred. 1 blonde and sharp-eyed. The other 2 carried themselves like hired guns. They stopped a short distance from the house. The scarred man dismounted and stepped forward. smiling like he owned the place. "Eli Mercer," he called. "We're here for the woman." Eli stayed behind cover. "You're trespassing." The man spread his hands. "We're licensed bounty men. She's wanted back east." "That's a lie," Nora said clearly from inside. "You killed my family." The blond man laughed. "Little Miss has a wild imagination." Eli raised his rifle. "You have 10 seconds to leave." The smile vanished. The hired guns reached for their weapons. Eli fired. The world exploded into noise. One man went down screaming. Nora fired too. Her shot went wide but forced them to scatter. Bullets slammed into wood. Splinters flew. Smoke burned Eli's lungs. "They're trying to flank us," Eli shouted. He saw the blond man break toward the barn. Eli made his decision in a heartbeat. "Stay here," he told Nora. "Don't let them advance." Before she could argue, he was gone. The barn swallowed him in shadow. Horses screamed. Dust filled the air. Eli moved slow now, listening. Feeling. A shape dropped from above. They hit the ground hard. Eli lost his rifle. Fists flew. Pain exploded along his jaw. He tasted blood. The man was strong. Fast. Desperate. A knife flashed. Heat burned along Eli's arm. Eli grabbed the man's wrist and slammed it down until the knife fell. They rolled. Struggled. Eli found the man's throat and squeezed. The fight drained out of him. Eli staggered to his feet, breathing hard. The man lay still but alive. That would have to be enough. When Eli returned to the house, the fight was over. Nora stood in the main room, rifle steady. Two men knelt with their hands raised. The wounded man bled onto the floor. Relief hit Eli so hard his knees almost gave out. "I thought you were dead," Nora whispered. "I'm here." They rode into town with prisoners in tow. The marshal listened carefully, asked questions. Wired, Chicago. By the time the sun dipped low, the truth began to surface. They returned home exhausted. Inside, Nora cleaned Eli's wound with careful hands. Whiskey burned, he hissed. "You scared me," she said. "So did you." She laughed weakly. Then her voice broke. "When you ran out there, I thought I lost you." Eli caught her hand, held it. Something shifted, no more pretending. "I love you," she said softly. "I didn't mean to, but I do." Eli kissed her before she could say more, poured everything into it. Fear, relief, want. "I love you too," he said. They stood there, holding each other, knowing nothing would ever be the same. Outside, the wind rose again. And somewhere beyond the hills, consequences were still unfolding. They did not speak of love again that night. They did not need to. Eli slept little, his arm throbbing beneath the bandage, his mind restless. Every time the house creaked, he woke. Every gust of wind set his hand searching for the rifle beside the bed. Yet beneath the vigilance, something else stirred. A warmth he had not felt in years. In the next room, Nora lay awake too. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the same sounds, the same silence. Her heart still raced when she thought of Eli running toward danger without hesitation, of his hands shaking only after it was over, of the way he had kissed her like it was a promise and a confession all at once. Morning came slow and pale. They moved around each other carefully at first, polite, guarded, like stepping around something fragile that might break if handled wrong. Nora cooked breakfast. Eli ate. Their eyes met, held, then looked away. Finally, Eli spoke. "The marshal will send word," he said. "If those men are what you say they are, they won't walk free." Nora nodded. Samuel kept records. He said the truth would surface if the right people looked. Eli's jaw tightened at his brother's name. He should have come home. "He wanted to," she said gently. "He talked about you near the end, said you were the one who stayed, the strong one." Eli said nothing. He finished his coffee and stood. "I've got fencing to repair." "I'll come," Nora said. They worked side by side beneath a wide sky, fixing posts loosened by wind and time. The rhythm helped. Hammer, hold, pull, Sweat and silence. "You didn't have to run after him," Nora said at last. "I did. You could have died. So could you." Quote. She stopped working and faced him. "If it comes down to it, I won't leave you." Eli met her gaze. "You'll do exactly what I tell you if things go bad." She shook her head. "I won't survive losing you." The words hung between them. Eli looked away first. That evening, a rider appeared on the horizon. The marshal's man brought confirmation. Names, charges, murder, fraud. The truth Samuel had died carrying was finally out. Nora sagged with relief. Tears came quietly. Eli stood beside her, one hand resting lightly on her back. Not claiming, just there. "They'll hang," the rider said. "Justice will be done." After he left, the ranch felt different, lighter, like something had been lifted from the land itself. That night, Nora stood on the porch watching the stars. Eli joined her. "You don't have to stay now," he said. She looked at him. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." "Then I'm staying." He nodded once. That was answer enough. Days passed, then weeks. They found a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Nora brought life into the house. Curtains, flowers, laughter. Eli found himself smiling without meaning to, talking more, sleeping better. One evening, as snow dusted the ground for the first time, Eli stopped her in the doorway. "I won't take advantage of you," he said. "I know. You came here needing protection. I came here and found a home." Silence stretched, warm. "Honest. Marry me," Eli said suddenly. Nora blinked. "Eli, I know it's fast. I know it's not sensible, but I know what I want." She searched his face. Found only certainty. "Yes," she said, "I will." Winter came hard. They married in town with only a handful of witnesses, simple vows, steady hands. When Eli kissed her, it felt like the world settling into place. The ranch was no longer quiet. It was alive. Spring brought calves. Work. Hope. One evening, Nora took Eli's hand and placed it against her stomach. "I'm with child." Eli forgot how to breathe. Joy hit him so fiercely he had to sit down. He pulled her into his arms and held her, like the world might try to take her away. They named the baby Samuel when he arrived in the fall. A boy with dark hair and strong lungs. Years passed like pages turning. A daughter followed. Then another son. The house grew. The ranch prospered. Laughter replaced loneliness. On quiet nights, Eli and Nora sat on the porch watching the land breathe. "You ever regret it?" Eli asked once. "Not for a moment," she said. He took her hand. "Neither do I." They grew old together. When Eli died, it was peaceful. Nora's hand in his last breath a smile. She followed him years later. They were buried side by side on the hill. And when the wind moves just right across the Montana plains, those who live on the land swear they can feel it. A love that began with a letter and brought a man home. Time did not rush after that. It moved the way it always had on the plains, slow, steady, unstoppable. Eli and Nora learned that love was not made only of grand moments. It lived in the small ones. In shared silence before dawn, in hands brushing as they passed, in narrow spaces, in the way Eli always waited until Nora sat before he ate, in the way Nora set aside the best piece of bread for him without thinking. Their son Samuel grew strong and curious. He followed Eli everywhere, asking endless questions about fences, cattle, weather, and stars. Nora watched them from the porch some evenings, her heart full to the point of ache. When their daughter Ruth was born, the house grew louder, messier, warmer. Ruth had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn will. She learned to walk early and spoke with authority before she could pronounce words clearly. Life was not without hardship. There were winters when snow buried the fences and hunger pressed close. Years when drought cracked the land and tested Eli's patience and faith. There were nights when Nora woke shaking from dreams of fire and shouting men, and Eli held her until the memories loosened their grip. They argued sometimes. About money. About risk. About when to let the children grow and when to hold them close. But they never doubted each other. That was the anchor. When Samuel was 10, a sickness swept through nearby ranches. Fever took cattle and nearly took Ruth. Nora stayed by her daughter's side for 3 days without sleep, cooling her skin, whispering prayers. Eli paced like a caged animal, helpless in a way that terrified him. Ruth lived. After that, Eli began every morning with gratitude. Quiet, private, fierce. As the children grew, Nora made sure they learned more than ranch work. She taught them letters, numbers, and stories of places far beyond Montana. She believed knowledge was another kind of protection. Eli watched her teach with pride. He had never imagined a woman like her could belong to this land. Yet she had shaped herself into it without losing who she was. When Samuel turned 18, he came to his father one evening after chores. "I want to build my own place," he said. The words struck Eli harder than he expected. Not anger, loss. He nodded anyway. "That land east of the creek is yours." Samuel smiled, relief flooding his face. "I'll still be here every day." "I know." Watching his son step into manhood was both painful and right. Eli understood then what his own father must have felt. The pride, the ache, the quiet fear of becoming unnecessary. Ruth followed her own path. She wanted to learn medicine. People laughed at first, said it was foolish, said the world did not need women with ambitions like that. Nora ignored them. Eli sold a portion of cattle to pay for Ruth's schooling back east. When she left, the house felt emptier than it ever had. But when she returned years later, confident and capable, Eli cried without shame. The ranch grew with each passing decade. New buildings, new methods, new hands, but the heart of it remained unchanged. Eli and Nora worked side by side as long as they could. When age slowed them, their children stepped in without being asked. Some evenings, Eli and Nora rode together to the hill overlooking the land, the same hill Eli had climbed as a boy when he needed to think. "Look at it all," Nora said once. "We built a life from fear and chance." "From a letter," Eli replied. She smiled. "From choosing not to turn away." Quote, "They held hands as the sun slipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in colors that never failed to humble them. When Eli's hair turned fully white, he worked less, sat more, watched. He watched grandchildren run through grass that had once known only silence. Watched Nora laugh with lines around her eyes that told the story of a life well lived. One quiet morning, Eli did not wake. Nora knew before anyone told her. She lay beside him for a long time, her hand resting over his heart, memorizing the stillness. His passing was gentle, like a candle going out at dawn. The days after blurred together. Voices, hands, food she did not remember eating. Nora moved through it all with quiet grace. She visited his grave every evening. "I'll be along soon," she told him once. Not yet, but soon. She lived 5 more years, long enough to see more grandchildren born, long enough to pass on stories, long enough to feel complete. When she died, she was buried beside Eli on the hill. 2 stones, simple words. Together. Always. The ranch continued. Generations came and went. Names changed, faces changed. But the story did not. It was told at tables and by firelight, passed down like an heirloom. The story of a rancher who opened his door, of a woman who carried a letter across the country, of a choice that changed everything. On quiet evenings when the wind moved just right, people said the land felt watched over, not in a haunting way, in a comforting one, like home. Long after Eli and Nora were gone, the ranch still breathed with their presence. It lived in the worn porch boards, polished smooth by generations of boots, in the fences repaired again and again, rather than replaced, in the way the house always smelled faintly of wood smoke and bread, no matter who lived there. Samuel's children grew up hearing the story before they could read. It was told on winter nights when the wind howled outside and the lamps burned low, told slowly, with reverence. It always began the same way, with a knock on a door. Samuel became his father in ways he had never expected. Not in temperament. He was gentler, quicker to laugh, but when hard decisions came, he stood firm. The land responded to him the way it had to Eli. Ruth returned often, her medical practice in town never keeping her away for long. She carried her mother's steadiness into every sick room. When people asked where she learned her strength, she always smiled and said, "At home." The ranch endured droughts and floods, war years, lean markets, good years that felt like gifts. Each challenge was met with the same quiet resolve Eli and Nora had lived by. Do the work, keep your word, don't turn away someone in need. The letter was kept in a wooden box lined with cloth, yellowed now, fragile, brought out only on rare occasions. Children were told not to touch it until they were old enough to understand what it meant. It was not just ink on paper. It was the beginning of everything. As the years rolled on, new houses appeared on the land, built by sons and daughters who wanted to stay close but needed space to grow. Laughter echoed where once there had been only wind. One summer evening, a great-granddaughter sat on the same hill where Eli and Nora had watched the sunset so many times. She held the letter carefully in her lap, reading it aloud to her own child. "Why did he help her?" the child asked. "Because he could," she said. "And because love sometimes arrives disguised as duty." The child thought about that. "Would you have helped her?" he asked. She smiled. "I hope so." That was the question the story always left behind. Not what happened, but what choice would you make? On the centennial of the ranch, the family gathered in numbers too large to count. Old photographs were passed around, stories overlapped. Names repeated themselves across generations. Someone placed flowers on the hill, no one needed to say why. As the sun dipped low, the wind moved through the grass the same way it always had. Steady, patient, unchanging. And for just a moment, it felt like Eli and Nora were there again. Watching. Content. The ranch had been more than land. It had been proof that a single act of kindness could ripple outward through time. That love born of responsibility could become something enduring. That home was not always the place you started. Sometimes it was the place you chose. In the end, the ranch did what it had always done. It endured. Seasons continued their slow turning. Snow fell, snow melted, calves were born. Fields were cut and replanted. Life moved forward, steady and unremarkable in the way that only the most meaningful things ever are. Those who lived on the land felt its history without always naming it. There were moments, usually at dusk, when the air grew quiet and heavy, and people found themselves pausing for no clear reason. A hand resting on a fence rail. A breath held just a second longer, as if something unseen was passing by. The descendants of Eli and Nora grew up with choices neither of them had known. Some stayed. Some left and returned. Some carried the ranch in their blood, even when their lives took them far away. But no matter how far they went, they came back. Weddings were held under wide skies. Funerals were marked by silence and respect. Babies were rocked in the same rooms where generations before had laughed and cried and prayed. The house changed over time. Walls moved, roofs replaced, new floors laid over old ones. But one thing never changed. The front door. It was repaired countless times, sanded, painted, rehung, but it remained in the same place, facing the open land, as if waiting for whoever might need it. The story of the letter was told less often as years passed, not because it was forgotten, but because it had become something deeper than a tale. It had become a way of living. When a traveler broke down on the road, someone stopped. When a neighbor lost a harvest, others shared. When grief came calling, no one faced it alone. That was the inheritance Eli and Nora left behind. Not just land, not just a name, but a standard. On a cool autumn evening, decades after Eli and Nora were laid to rest, a young man stood alone on the hill. He was newly returned to the ranch after years away. The world beyond Montana had been loud, fast, unforgiving. He had come home unsure if he still belonged. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the smell of earth and distance. He thought about the story he had heard all his life, about a man who had almost closed a door, about a woman who had dared to knock. He realized then that the story was not really about the past. It was about now, about what it meant to choose responsibility over fear, to choose compassion over comfort, to open a door even when the future was uncertain. The young man turned back toward the house. Lights glowed warmly through the windows. Laughter drifted out, the sound of dishes, of life, home. Years later, when he told the story to his own children, he ended it the same way every time, with a choice. Because that was the truth of it. Eli Mercer had not known what waited on the other side of that door. He had not known it would bring danger, or love, or family, or a legacy that would outlive him. He had only known someone needed help, and that had been enough. The hill remained. The graves remained. Simple stones, weathered by time. Visitors sometimes stop there without knowing why. Drawn by something quiet and steady. Together. Always. When the wind moved just right, when the sky burned gold at sunset, when the land felt especially still, it was easy to believe that Eli and Nora were still there, watching the life they had helped set in motion, not as ghosts, but as part of the place itself. The letter that had started it all was still kept safe, carefully unfolded only now and then, its ink faded, its paper fragile, but its meaning untouched by time. It reminded each generation that the greatest turning points rarely arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive as a knock. Sometimes they arrive with a trembling hand and a quiet request. And sometimes answering them brings you home.